Hi, my name is Akai. I'm the curator for the show This Particular Place. I'm also one of the participating artists working in the intersection of architecture and photography.
Hi, I'm Wan Kin. I'm a visual artist and engineer, and I'm one of the 6 artists exhibiting in the show.
In this show, 6 artists look at different modes of transition and displacement in their city and in their lives. This was a catch-up show reuniting artists which had shown previously in 2023 in a pop-up exhibition in a flea market. Last year, our exhibition looked at themes of displacement and transition in their lives. Since then, 3 of the artists, Smiha, Leonard, and Harshita, have since relocated away from Singapore. So in this show, they were encouraged to look at displacement as an embodied experience in their personal life since they have since been displaced away from Singapore. The shown here are works created by the artists just before or just after leaving Singapore, when this feeling of displacement and transition is still very fresh in their lives and in their practices. And so last year, the artists already knew that some of them would not be in Singapore forever. So they already know that they are going to leave Singapore willingly or unwillingly. And Singapore to them for some of them has been a transitional point as well. For instance, Smiha didn't want to leave Singapore, but she had to, whereas Leonard always yearned for New York City. And so Singapore just looks like this special place for them in this particular moment of their lives. As some of the artists are based overseas, communication might not be that direct due to time zone differences. So we really had to catch some particular hours of the day where both parties are awake so such a communication can happen.
So one of my works, Unwound, Unlight, is actually hung in the gallery space, and that artwork is actually something that was initially exhibited at Unlight, but it took on a totally different life within this white cube. In that sense, the initial artwork was taking the idea of this organic entity and adapting it to the space as a representation of ourselves and our exploration of various environments. And in doing so, here and now, I have essentially adapted that same installation for the same purpose, but in a different context, and as such kind of demonstrated the idea of adapting an artwork for a site-specific reason and representing us exploring different spaces and different places.
Okay, for this show, I'm showing 3 works which looks at different strategies of opening up more questions of how we look at transitional histories of abandoned buildings in Singapore. The works are presented in light boxes and projections, so it's a mix of recolor photographs and AI-generated images based on historical archives from both my own photography and from the National Collection. Abandoned buildings in Singapore sit in a very strange intersection of lost futures and forgotten past. They exist in some kind of limbo in this very rapidly changing city, and many of these buildings have since been either locked up or renovated or demolished. So they really exist in this very liminal and very transient state of being. This structure you see in the middle of the gallery is called Showroom on the Move. It's an installation by the artist collective Post Museum. So it was envisioned as a portable and traveling art gallery so that artworks can be configured and placed around it in whatever configuration we need, using simply just upcycled or recycled materials. Can be metal, wood, or even corrugated plastic. So this would bring artworks into the community and to increase accessibility to the everyday person. So in the previous show, all the artworks were mounted on this structure inside the flea market. And in the context of this gallery, now the showroom is in the gallery itself, but the artworks have been scattered around the walls. The challenge is we have to make sure that the artworks reach Singapore on time in a safe manner. So that means we have to anticipate how long the shipment is And sometimes the artwork will require specialist packaging, which has to be specially ordered in their home country, which that would need a kind of lead time as well. So throughout this whole process, we have to track the shipment of the artworks to make sure that it gets delivered on time and there's someone to receive it when it arrives.
I think it's also a case of, since it's not my first experience kind of doing this cross-country, cross-continent situation, communication is very important, and it's always good to have like a running update of like where people are, even in the practice or things that may be needed for the show. Even if it's like a last-minute thing and it's nice to have them communicate that across, or from either we communicate it to them or they communicate it to us. So that's very important. So for me, I think the challenging part would be, since not only we are the two people in Singapore, is the fact that we have our own schedules that we kind of have to work around. But the fact that we have the opportunity to use this space and actually curate whatever the works that go into this space at our own time was something that was really great, because we could come in and work after hours, and that's something that is kind of a throwback to how I like to work personally in the evenings or at night, and gives me that kind of clarity to actually place everything out and figure everything out whilst kind of Akai curates and directs where things can go.
Because only two of us are in the exhibition, so we really have to figure out on the strategy of installing the work, because some works are more complicated to hang than others. So for some works that are quite straightforward, it's just a screw or just a nail on the wall. But for some works, we really have to figure out the dimensions, the distances, the light or darkness of the ambient surroundings, and even maybe some last-minute requirements or some circumstances which we didn't foresee. And also some works takes a longer time to hang out, and some works you can hang out by yourself, but some works you need 2 people or even 3 people to hang and direct it.
So I think one example was, for instance, like this cube, we definitely needed help. So I think Akai called in some of his friends as well as some of the helpers help from Post Museum to actually set it up. And also knowing, like he mentioned, like some of the works are easier to manipulate and hang up and curate. It gave me the time to actually hang up my work, which took way longer than I think most of the other works did. Yeah.
Also thankful for friends who have popped by and volunteered their help, even though they are not participating artists themselves. Yeah, some of them, they even brought along like their tools to help out. Yeah. It's always very heartening for artists to support each other in their installation, even though they are not part of the show themselves. I think it's something which we really need, and which I really value from my artist friends and from the artist community in Singapore, where we are there to help and look out for each other.
I personally think it's important to know who the artists are, what their practice is like, because different mediums obviously would sit differently with next to different artworks, and thus it's important to know what they need in terms of both like the production as well as what works with what other artworks, not just medium-wise but conceptually as well. I think it was very interesting that Akai had included also the idea where the Post Museum and the fact that this cube was something that brought us initially all together, and it's back here again to kind of anchor this exhibition, right?
Yeah. It's also important for exhibition producers and curators to think about how these works might engage each other in conversation, and also how they look like next to each other, and whether any of the artworks have any conflicting requirements or any special methods of mounting, which we may have to figure out before the show starts installation. So we know what hardware products to buy, or maybe we need even some specialist products which might be very challenging to find under normal circumstances. And for digital works as well, we need to figure out whether, for example, the media format, whether it's compatible, and what happens, and what if one artwork requires light and the other artwork next to it requires darkness. And also about even blocking out the sunlight coming from the gallery windows. And whether or not the house lights of the gallery can be configured to suit the exhibition layout that we planned for. Also of how different artists with different backgrounds and different practices, they can come together to examine a single topic in their own lens, in their own way.
Yeah. I think that's the important thing that people take away is everyone also has their own voice in terms of how they value space and how they view space. Like we were discussing earlier, it was a case of how our behaviors are shaped by the spaces that we are immersed in and how we perceive them. It all pertains to that, but at the same time, in my own practice, I also think of it as how we shape the future of that space and we shape the space around us, whether in the present or like the immediate future. Yeah, that's very important that people or audiences at least develop that kind of sensitivity. And I think it's evident in a lot of our works, particularly like for instance even in like Smiha's work or Harshita's work, there are cases where they actually come in direct contact with the space, like doing either like rubbings of the environment, the direct environment, or documenting a performance in a space that's no longer going to be there, right? So,
And maybe arts can even reveal more questions rather than provide answers about how we relate to our city and our environment. It's always very exciting to mount your own show, to see your vision and your planning to come to life. And of course, this conversation between artists and friends of their vision for the artwork in the space and how to translate their vision into a cohesive statement.
I think for me, it's incredible that even in this short period, we had the opportunity to put up the work, because as I've understood, like it's a show that we squeezed into like the time period, and even then, the fact that the opportunity was given is an incredible thing, because I feel like most organizations or most other places might have just said, okay, this is a two-week buffer period where we can actually take time to reflect on the next show that's coming up. But instead, like they gave us the opportunity to show all our works in this allocated slot. Yeah.
Okay, this is a good opportunity for artists and curators to be more experimental in their approach to showmaking and art making, which typically would not be supported by our more conventional kind of gallery spaces. This allows artists to be more true to themselves and to explore different methods of engaging with visitors.
Yeah, I think for me it's a bit challenging to see the direction in terms of where or what approach. Of course, like I've had advice from different people going like, okay, you should probably check out more residencies. But I personally take things as they come and see what opportunities show themselves, and then in my case I would always love to explore the intersection of how technology can be used as both a medium and a method in the process of art making, and that's pretty much where I've been going over the past year or year and a half. Personally,
I've been doing a lot of writing into residencies and open call proposals. So that will actually allow me to even exercise my own ideas more, and how do we communicate these concepts across to potential collaborators, spaces, even potential like festival organizers. And we have to achieve an understanding of what they want and what can we produce, and whether there's an intersection between these two so that maybe our proposal have a higher chance of being accepted.